This is breaking news from Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And that breaking news is happening on Manhattan's Lower East Side. 2 New York cops have been shot, and 1 person right now is in custody.
And these are live pictures from Newscopter 7. We're going to check in with Shannon Sohn above the scene in just a minute. But first, we want to get right to Lauren Glassberg with our first live pictures from the ground. Lauren, what's the latest?
Well, Sade and Bill, I can tell you those 2 NYPD officers who have been shot are sergeants. We also understand that they are both expected to be okay. And I'm going to show you the scene right behind me. This is Eldridge and Delancey Street, and you can see the police tape and a number of officers down the street. That is where the shooting took place. We understand this started at about 4:15. Those officers were responding to the report of a gun being used in a robbery attempt at an e-bike business on Canal Street at 91 Canal Street. Police responded to that store and then chased this armed suspect. They ended up at Delancey and Eldridge, where police say that suspect fired shots. 2 officers were hit, 1 in the groin, the other was grazed. Both were taken to Bellevue Hospital, and both are believed to be okay. As for that suspect, and we have some video of him, he was taken into police custody. Police also were able to retrieve a gun from the scene. The officers, again, both sergeants. 1 was grazed, 1 shot in the leg or groin area, and they are expected to be okay. And they also did not return fire. But again, this started as an armed robbery on Canal Street. Those officers gave chase, followed that suspect right here to the Lower East Side. Many of these streets are now closed off as this investigation is taking place. But those 2 officers at Bellevue Hospital, we understand there will be a press conference later this afternoon to let us know about their status. But we understand that they will be okay, and that suspect is now in custody. Live on the Lower East Side, Lauren Glassberg, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
And just fascinating. They didn't return fire. Maybe they couldn't. Lauren, really interesting. We want to go to Shannon Sohn live in Newscopter 7. Shannon was the first on the air with the news of the cops getting shot. What does it look like now? I'll tell you what we saw in the newsroom when you were shooting it right there. That guy going into the police car. That was just amazing.
Yeah, that was absolutely amazing. And it's amazing also the difference just in 20 minutes in the scene. You were looking down where Lauren mentioned the shooting actually took place on Eldridge between Rivington Street and Delancey Street, and just a much calmer environment. A lot of police officers around, but we can even bring you to the rooftop and you can see police on the roof as well. But I do believe we've got some tape that we can show you of that moment when the suspect was brought into police custody. That happened at the intersection of Eldridge and Delancey Street. Clearly a few chaotic moments, but it's like the mood broke the second they brought that guy into police custody. So let's take you through this scene and really paint the picture of what Lauren just showed you from the ground, because right now we've got Delancey Street shut down with the police activity between Allen Street and Forsyth, but that is significant because that is your access off of the Williamsburg Bridge. And Lauren also mentioned that this all started down at 91 Canal Street with an attempted robbery. And you can see that is where Canal Street is. It is really adjacent with Eldridge. So you can imagine the police activity taking you completely up Eldridge Street, about 5 blocks away where all of this ended. Again, that gunfire erupted. Those 2 officers shot, both of them sergeants. They did not return fire, as we have now learned, but that suspect is in custody, and the scene much more calm, although an extensive search of the area is now completely underway, and it's going to be shut down in this area for quite some time with the ongoing investigation. Reporting live over the Lower East Side, Shannon Sohn, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, keep us posted, Shannon. Remarkable work on all of that today. Again, all of this unfolding within the last 45 minutes or so. We expect to hear from police officials. As Shannon said, we're going to bring you their comments live when they happen and keep you posted on air and online.
And now we want to turn to the heat and temperatures feeling like triple digits for some of us today. Meteorologist Jeff Smith in for Lee with our first look at the AccuWeather forecast. Oh, it's steamy.
Yeah, and Sade, not only just feeling like triple digits, actually getting up to that value at Newark. That was a record high, tied a record daily high back from 2006 at Newark. Central Park and LaGuardia getting up to 95, and just a couple degrees off record highs at places like Islip and Bridgeport getting up to 93 and 92 respectively. And that heat advisory continues into the day tomorrow. Not quite as hot tomorrow, but humidity will more than make up for it. And heat index values tomorrow between 95 and 100 degrees. Also, we have an air quality alert into northeastern and central parts of New Jersey. Unhealthy for sensitive groups, elevated ground level ozone, and also some particulates. Those particles in the atmosphere actually from the smoke from the western wildfires working its way all the way to the east coast and working its way down into the lower part of the atmosphere. So right now, 90 at Central Park, 93 Somerville, 94 at Toms River, where it feels like 104. It's much more humid off to the south of New York City, so those heat index values are quite a bit higher there. Also, a couple of storms popping up, especially where it is more humid. Monmouth County getting a thunder shower there, northern parts of the county. Also, one heavier shower moved across parts of the Bronx, crossed over into northeastern Queens, northwestern parts of Nassau County near Great Neck, and another cell here over western Morris County. Just a shower at this point, but we'll keep an eye on the radars into the early part of the evening. Hot and humid through tomorrow, feeling like 100 in spots. Any afternoon and evening thunderstorms tomorrow can be on the heavy side, especially with the humidity increasing, and it's even more active over the weekend with multiple rounds of storms containing the potential for flooding downpours at times. Barely going below 80 for a low tonight in New York City. Low 90s tomorrow, feeling more like 95 to 100. Could be quite an active afternoon. Tomorrow's heat index values maybe getting well over 100 off to the south and west of New York City. Plus, we're keeping an eye on the tropics. Lots to talk about in the AccuWeather forecast coming up. Back over to you.
Okay, lots to talk about for news as well. We're going to go to that historic prisoner swap now between the U.S., Russia, and 5 other countries. 24 prisoners now freed, including 3 Americans.
And among them, Wall Street Journal reporter and New Jersey native Evan Gershkovich and U.S. Marine Paul Whelan, who's been in prison since 2018. And this is a day Gershkovich and Whelan have longed for. The two captured in this video boarding a plane before leaving Russia. And again here, smiling on board the plane in a photo shared by the president.
This was a very complex deal, a big win for President Biden, who today declared, his words, their brutal ordeal is over. But even more so, this was a big emotional win for the family and friends of these freed prisoners. And you're going to hear from them in just a moment.
We have team coverage tonight. New Jersey reporter Anthony Johnson is standing by in Princeton with reaction in Gershkovich's hometown. But we begin in the newsroom with Eyewitness News anchor Sandra Bookman and how this all unfolded today. Sandra?
Sade, in his remarks right out of the gate earlier today, President Biden called this a very good afternoon. Today's deal is the latest in a series of prisoner swaps negotiated between Russia and the U.S. in the last 2 years, but the first to require significant concessions from other countries. Without that cooperation, these detainees would likely not be coming home.
Their brutal ordeal is over, and they're free.
President Biden delivered that long-awaited good news from the White House, surrounded by several of the freed prisoners' families. The biggest prisoner exchange between Washington, Moscow, and 4 other governments since the Cold War included 16 individuals detained in Russia in exchange for 8 others held in the U.S., Germany, Norway, Slovenia, and Poland.
The deal that made this possible was a feat of diplomacy and friendship.
Among those now released prisoners flown out of Russia to Turkey and soon to be back on American soil, Wall Street Journal reporter Evan Gershkovich, held for 1.5 years and convicted of espionage just last month. Former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan, imprisoned for 5 years as a spy, and Russian-American journalist Alsu Kormasheva. The trio seen smiling and holding an American flag in this photo taken shortly after their release. And more smiles on the plane home. Also released prominent Putin critic and U.S. permanent resident Vladimir Kara-Murza. The State Department says today's swap was the result of years of complicated behind-the-scenes negotiations that ultimately led Berlin and the German chancellor to agree to release convicted Russian assassin Vadim Krasikov, Moscow's key demand.
The White House said, he said, for you, and then he said, I will do this. Is that fair? And if so, can you at least detail that? I can confirm that he did say that.
So for anyone who questions whether allies matter, they do.
The president, Vice President Harris, and family members will be on hand to greet the newly freed detainees when they land on American soil later tonight. And late confirmation this evening that the plane carrying the former prisoners will land at Andrews Air Force Base at about 11:30 tonight. Now, from the beginning, the Wall Street Journal, Gershkovich's family, and the U.S. government insisted that the espionage charges against him were bogus, that he was simply a journalist doing his job. Well, today, as Gershkovich filled out a mandatory form to finalize his release from Russian custody, he asked if Putin would consider doing an interview. Bill?
Because he's a reporter, that's why. Thank you, Sandra. We want to focus tonight on that freed prisoner from our area, Evan Gershkovich. The reporter for the Wall Street Journal grew up in Princeton, New Jersey, and tonight some of those who knew him and know him are speaking to our New Jersey reporter, Anthony Johnson. Anthony is live in Princeton for us tonight. AJ?
Yeah, Bill, a lot of people are coming up to us and talking to us and asking us why we're here. We're telling them the news, and they are certainly elated. A lot of folks have been covering this story or watching this story, paying attention to the drama that was taking place for Evan over in Russia. And so many of them today are happy. In Evan's old neighborhood, those who remember his family before they moved are thrilled he's heading back to the United States.
My reaction was just like, you know, I was just so excited because we've been wondering when this would happen.
Meanwhile, his co-workers at the Wall Street Journal showed their continued support of Evan Gershkovich yesterday, wearing shirts saying, "I stand with Evan." Those same shirts were worn by members of the Princeton High School soccer team this season. Evan went to school and won a state championship here in 2009. His soccer coach is feeling relieved by his release.
It really is great news. It couldn't be better. I think August 1st, 2024 will be an important date for a lot of people. So.
The assistant coach of that successful team says watching Evan on TV during his court appearances made him confident that his former student would endure despite being unjustly locked up.
Words can't express how we all felt. Scared, concerned, worried for his family, and wanting to know what little part we could do to help.
Inside of Conti's restaurant, there's a picture of the winning 2009 team. It includes a photo of an elated Evan. The governor of New Jersey is also happy his ordeal is done, stating, "I'm thrilled to hear that after over a year of detention, Evan Gershkovich has been freed from Russia." Evan is a New Jersey native and Princeton High School graduate who was wrongfully convicted of espionage by the brutal Putin regime, a pawn in a politically motivated game. And when Evan was on the soccer team, they came here to Conti's restaurant a lot of times to celebrate. There was a planned event for August the 25th to honor Evan. Now they're hoping it's going to be a hometown celebration. That is the latest live from Princeton, New Jersey. Anthony Johnson, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Wow, really interesting, Anthony. Thank you. From the folks who knew Gershkovich to the people he worked with. Look at this. Folks at the Wall Street Journal newsroom in Manhattan cheering, celebrating the news about their colleague. Wow, goosebumps all around. Just amazing. We're going to keep you posted on air and online all night. Don't forget, these prisoners are coming back home tonight. Around 11 o'clock, we'll have the latest.
Such great news. Well, we are also following more breaking news. First responders are on the scene of an incident involving a crane in Borough Park, Brooklyn. And you can see from Newscopter 7, a portion of that crane's arm came crashing down below. Eyewitness News reporter Stefan Kim is live on the scene. And Stefan, first of all, was anyone hurt?
Well, Sade, that's the good news at this hour. First responders do not believe there are any injuries, but take a look at the top of that roof there. That crane, that portion of it, is still sitting up there, precariously dangling off the edge. In fact, witnesses say when they were afraid it would fall off the roof and onto the street below before firefighters arrived. And moments ago, police just moved everyone back because they're now, as you can see, attempting to somehow lift that thing off the roof. The first attempt did not work. Whatever they were trying. So now they're trying some other maneuver. We'll be here and see how that's working, but it is a brand new building, 4 stories, and it appears to be occupied. We've seen families coming in and out of the building. Newscopter 7 from above shows how large that portion of the crane is. It looks like from up there, it damaged at least 2 top floor units. This is 1442 44th Street in Borough Park, Brooklyn. It happened just after 2:30 this afternoon. Let's take a listen to what one witness had to say to us.
It was scary. In the moment, it was very scary. When the crane collapsed, and helicopters, everything. We thought the building or the crane could fall on people, but it didn't. So.
Oh wow! So for a moment, people were worried that it could fall off the building.
Yeah, people were worried about that.
Wow. Okay. Now, again, first responders say a primary search of the building came out negative, meaning they do not believe there are any injuries at this time. As for whether this building is stable, Buildings Department inspectors are still figuring it out, but for now, they say there is a full vacate order. Reporting live in Borough Park, Brooklyn, Stefan Kim, Channel 7, Eyewitness News.
Yeah, you got to be really careful with things like that. Okay, Stefan, thank you. And still to come, residents living in deplorable conditions in the Bronx say a bad situation is getting worse. Their message to the landlord and how that landlord is responding.
Also ahead in Eyewitness News at 5 o'clock, just days after bringing home the gold in the team competition, members of the women's gymnastic team compete for individual medals. We're going to tell you how they did today. That's next.
And we're continuing to follow that breaking news on the Lower East Side. 2 NYPD officers shot while responding to a robbery on Canal Street in Chinatown. They were chasing the suspect through the streets when the suspect opened fire. We are awaiting a news conference from police. When that happens, we'll bring it right to you live. We'll be right back.
Now, New York's #1 news, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Developing right now, a deadly house explosion at South River, New Jersey. 1 person killed, a home leveled, the cleanup and investigation just beginning.
New overnight, a large protest outside of the new school in Greenwich Village, an encampment set up inside the lobby. It comes as police prepare to give an update about that raid at Columbia. We've learned an officer accidentally fired a shot.
But we begin with that mess on I-95 in Norwalk, Connecticut, and this is why that huge tanker fire shutting down part of a major interstate. The demolition work getting underway this morning, and when that closed down portion could reopen. It is a busy Friday. It's May 3rd. I'm Mike Marza.
I'm Charlene Ellicott. We do have team coverage of the tanker fire and its aftermath. Heather O'Rourke is going to tell you how you're going to be able to get around those closures. But first, Eyewitness News reporter Reagan Medji live in Norwalk with the very latest on this as that commute gets underway. Reagan.
The commute is a very cozy one. Now, we are going to be competing with a beautiful sunrise. Not so beautiful, this behind me. This is I-95. This is the northbound lane. You can see that we have about 4 or 5 lanes of traffic trying to squeeze into one. So now Sean is going to turn the camera and we're going to look at that entrance point. This is the single lane exit point, exit 14 off of I-95 headed north here in Norwalk, Connecticut, where all of that traffic has to get off of 95 and then veer around and snake through the community to get back onto 95. Now, as we compete with the sunrise, let's pan to the left and you can see that there's some flashing lights and activity underneath that overpass. It's that overpass that will be demolished today. That is where the tanker truck caught fire underneath, compromising the entire structure and shutting down traffic both north and southbound on I-95, a major thoroughfare for the Northeast corridor. Let's take a look at some video now about all of what happened yesterday. For 3 hours, flames raging out of control after a gasoline tanker filled to the brim with 9,000 gallons of fuel caught fire. Now, this accident happened at 5:30 yesterday morning on the southbound side of I-95 in Norwalk, Connecticut. Officials say a car cut off a tractor trailer. The gasoline truck then swerved to avoid them, but the back of the tanker ripped apart. Gas then spewed all over the road and nearby cars, then burst into flames, which cooked the steel of the Fairfield Avenue overpass, warping the bridge and damaging it beyond repair. On the northbound side, gas and telephone utility lines running under the bridge were damaged. And get this, all of this happening and no one was injured. Structural engineers determine the overpass must come down, and the traffic, even this morning, really started backing up as it continues to snake around to avoid this specific area.
This accident is probably causing millions of dollars to the state, to everybody.
On traffic going to work, on traffic going to practice, on traffic going home, so a lot of traffic. It's okay, we're gonna get through it.
So as all the traffic is exiting on exit 14, this is heading northbound on I-95. We have the schools in the area, they're closed. Practices for sports, that's not happening. But things like activities, games, proms, dramatic performances, those are still on. And of course, Heather O'Rourke is going to have much more about this. That's it for here in Norwalk, Connecticut. Reagan Medji, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Reagan, thank you. Let's get right to Heather now for more on how people are going to get around all of this.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, Mike?
All right, Brittany, thank you. 6:05 and back to this developing story unfolding in South River, New Jersey. A deadly home explosion leveling the home, damaging those nearby, and the damage left behind just breathtaking. John Del Giorno above the scene at Newscopter 7. Oh, my. John.
Mike, the scope and force of this explosion is clear from the air as we look down at this scene with the first daybreak this morning, and we're live over South River, New Jersey. This is the scene at the end of Continental Court. The police and fire department were called here just after 7 o'clock last night after the report of an explosion. When they arrived on the scene, this is what they found. This house completely leveled. The force of this explosion so violent that you can see the roof landed on the ground almost intact. The walls blown in all directions. 2 male victims were found here at the scene. One of those victims discovered with fatal injuries, pronounced dead at the scene. That man, a retired member of the Newark Police Force. The other person taken to Robert Wood Johnson Hospital. We don't know the extent of his injuries. Right now, the investigation into the cause of this explosion just now getting underway. And we're live over South River, New Jersey. John Del Giorno, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Oh, just heartbreaking. Thank you for that, John. Another pro-Palestinian protest overnight at a local college, this time at the new school in Greenwich Village, where protesters have occupied the university's lobby. Meantime, at Columbia, we've learned an officer accidentally fired their weapon during Tuesday night's raid on Hamilton Hall. The NYPD will address the incident later this morning. Eyewitness News reporter Phil Tate live in Greenwich Village with all of the latest on this. Phil?
Yes, Charlene, right now we're on 13th and 5th. This is where protesters flooded this complete area. It is quiet right now. Now, Shirley and Mike, we've been showing you one lobby of the new school. This is now another, where there are multiple signs posted up on the glass, as well as tents that are inside. There are students right inside sleeping right now. You're taking a look right now. We saw food and water and things just packed up on side of that table, as many students are still inside this morning. We spoke with a few upon our arrival. They told me they won't be leaving until their demands are met, and they say that they won't stand down.
We're camped out in here and also the building over there. They have threatened us with suspension and implied that we are going against policy and protest guidelines. But we know this, you know, it's not a secret, and we are willing to put that on the line.
Now take a look at your screen. These were scenes from last night as students shouted off near East 13th and 5th Ave, a fired-up demonstration with many clapping, chanting, and even banging on instruments. There were also counter-protesters yesterday evening with the NYPD standing by. Scenes like this becoming a familiar sight for many colleges and universities grappling with how to ease an already heightened situation with protesters as students call on these institutions to divest from Israeli-related entities. Now there are ongoing conversations between the NYPD, the city, and school administrations about when these protests pop up. Over at NYU, more protests continued, where students to continue to occupy an outside corridor filled with tents and signs. Many standing their ground at this encampment as they say they do not plan to leave, although there's been a mass crackdown of arrests just days ago between City College and Columbia. Now, between both schools, 282 people were arrested, and police say 47% weren't even affiliated with these schools. Right now, an active investigation underway since Columbia requested that the NYPD move in. While entering Hamilton Hall Tuesday night, an officer unintentionally discharged their weapon, striking no one. This, as the mayor says, there were people who should not have been there. Again, right now, you are getting a live look at another lobby of the new school. This as there are students who are just sleeping on many air mattresses. There have been about 8 tents that we counted in this lobby, and there are also just many signs that are posted up inside with their message. Again, many students said that they will stand in unity. They said that they will not stand down until their demands are met, which is where they want to see that divestment from many of these Israeli entities. Again, the NYPD will be holding a press conference later this morning to talk more about what happened at Columbia, and we'll be bringing more on those updates later today. We're in Greenwich Village. I'm Phil Tate, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Phil, we'll see how it shakes out later on today. Coming up on 6:10, pro-Palestinian protesters at Rutgers University in New Brunswick have taken down their tents and left. They did so after a 4 p.m. deadline imposed by the school yesterday at the main campus. Administrators were threatening to have the demonstrators removed by police. Classes, final exams, and several other activities set for yesterday were canceled because of safety concerns.
Newark's curfew for teens is going to go into effect tonight. Under the new rules, no one under 18 will be allowed more than 100 yards away from their home without a guardian's consent between 11 p.m. and 5:30 a.m. As of now, the curfew will only be in effect on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays, but it will extend to 7 days a week once school is out. There are exceptions for work or community programs.
Testimony set to resume in former President Trump's hush money trial. Mr. Trump making headlines for what he said on his way out of court yesterday, falsely claiming that he can't testify in the trial because of the gag order. Mr. Trump had previously said he would testify. We'll see how that plays out throughout the trial. Meanwhile, Trump made another campaign stop after court, bringing some pizzas to the FDNY firefighters at a station on the east side.
The MTA and local law enforcement are continuing their crackdown on so-called ghost vehicles. During an operation that took place Monday and Wednesday, officers made arrests and seized the vehicles of drivers with covered or obstructed license plates. Officers were stationed at the MTA 7 bridges and tunnels. They seized nearly 200 cars, arrested nearly 60 drivers, and issued about 1,400 summonses. In March, the MTA launched a multi-agency task force to prevent people from paying tolls as congestion pricing approaches. The Port Authority says its tap-and-go payment technology is now available at turnstiles in all 7 PATH stations. The PATH Newport station was the last one to get the new tap readers. The Port Authority initially rolled out the new technology at 2 stations in December. A total of 2 million PATH riders have used it so far.
Well, the Knicks are moving on to the next round of the NBA playoffs after eliminating the Sixers in Game 6 at Philly last night. The Knicks helping seal the win with just 24 seconds remaining in the game, with Josh Hart hitting a big three-pointer.
Brooklyn drive, swing, Hart. He connects. Huge three. Knicks lead.
This was a really exciting game. The Knicks went on to win this one 118-115, taking the series 4-2. Jalen Brunson finished with 41 points. With the win, the Knicks advanced to the Eastern Conference semifinals for a second consecutive season. It's something the franchise hasn't accomplished since the year 2000.
Each game, we can't feel too good about this. You know, I told them enjoy it to midnight. I guess we're already past midnight, so we're thinking about what we have to do next.
Well, the Knicks now face the Pacers in the second round. Game 1 set for Monday night at the Garden.
6:12 right now. You are never more than 7 minutes away from weather and traffic. Meteorologist Brittany Bell here now with the forecast.
Hey. Now, this commuter alert ongoing. I-95 both ways between exits 14 and 15. All lanes are closed down at least through the weekend because of that fire. Now, we do have a picture to show you of that overpass, so you can see that the crews are out there. They have all lanes closed down. They have a lot of work to do to demolish that overpass, so we will keep you posted on that. In the meantime, let's go over here. And Charlene, over to you.
Heather and Brittany, thank you. Up next, the segregation lawsuit against New York City schools that could lead to big changes in the enrollment process.
Plus, some new video overnight of severe weather slamming parts of Texas.
This is breaking news from Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
The breaking news we've been following all night, a tremendous show of force from the NYPD, which arrested dozens of pro-Palestinian protesters and professional agitators at Columbia University. It comes less than a full day after the protesters stormed one of the university's main academic buildings.
Not far from there at City College, police clashed with protesters who tried to take a building themselves.
A live look right now at police headquarters in Lower Manhattan. You can see ongoing protests continue at this hour as cops continue to process more than than 100 people arrested overnight. So what do we do about all of these protesters who may be facing charges? Who were the protesters in particular? We'll tell you what we know at this hour, live in team coverage just ahead. Good morning on a busy Wednesday. It's May 1st. I'm Mike Marr.
Street cleaning rules are in effect. Mike, Charlene, over to you.
Thank you both so much. Now to that breaking news, an overwhelming show of force from the NYPD arresting scores of pro-Palestinian protesters at Columbia University and the City College of New York.
Here's what we know. Hundreds of officers were deployed after both campuses gave the green light for the NYPD to move in. Over 100 protesters were arrested at Columbia. Police cleared 2 encampments before moving into Hamilton Hall and securing the building 20 hours after protesters first occupied it. The NYPD asked to stay on campus past graduation, which is May 15th. And at City College, protesters there tried to take over a building before they were stopped by the NYPD. Video showing the tense situation unfold with clashes between cops and protesters.
Our team of reporters have all of the angles covered for us. Phil Tate standing by outside of police headquarters where there is an ongoing protest. But we do want to begin with Eyewitness News reporter Reagan Medji live outside of Columbia. Reagan?
So the university wanted to restore order and peace on the community. In fact, yesterday morning is when university officials reached out to the NYPD saying that this, at this point, is a law enforcement matter. It looked like things were starting to escalate. They felt at that point that the NYPD was the appropriate agency to provide the appropriate response. So then, as the day continued, the NYPD started noticing that there was a threat level increasing. They believed that the protesters inside Hamilton Hall were not just students. In fact, they were also outside agitators. And then they had no choice but to move in. Take a listen. So it was around 8:45 last night. The city received authorization from Columbia University to send the NYPD onto campus. Shortly before that happened, Columbia's emergency management operations team alerted the students to shelter in place for their safety due to heightened activity on campus. Then by 9 o'clock, NYPD units in helmets and shields entered the protester-occupied Hamilton Hall. They first entered using a bearcat as the protesters barricaded themselves inside using furniture, locks, anything they could to find that they found to block the entrances. According to police sources, once the police got inside, they deployed 4 so-called flashbang grenades. They did not use tear gas or any other force. They were then able to locate the protesters and start making arrests. The university and police believe the group that broke into and occupied the building was led by individuals who are not students or affiliated with the school at all. Police sources tell us about 50 arrests were made inside the building, mostly not Columbia students, but professionals. As Columbia's Hamilton Hall was getting cleared, students at City College a few blocks away attempted to also take over a building. The NYPD was also called there, preventing that from happening and also making several more arrests.
I visited the encampment. I talked to people there. I saw students who are deeply concerned and indignant against what's happening against the people of Gaza. And I saw the NYPD seal off the entrance and extremely aggressively push people out.
Now, the NYPD response was not because of the cause that the protests were championing. Instead, it's because the protesters were violating the laws and breaking the rules on campus. And now looking forward for today. When we talk about the students wanting to come on campus, they are still restricted. They still have to come through that tent behind me, show their ID to gain access. That also includes faculty and essential employees. Finals start on Friday. Also, the NYPD is expected to remain on campus to make sure that everything stays in order. The encampments aren't reestablished because graduation day is May 15th.
We're live here in Morningside Heights. Reagan Medji, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Reagan, thank you. Some of the people who were arrested are still being processed at this hour. And as you heard Reagan mention there, exactly who were these protesters? Well, that remains unclear. We do know the NYPD said that a big part of the group included outside professional agitators, not even affiliated with the campus. Eyewitness News reporter Phil Tate picks up our coverage of how police were able to get in there and clear everything up, plus a demonstration that continues at the 6 a.m. hour. Phil.
Yo, Mike, those demonstrations are still going strong. There is much energy and emotion out here. This as they just lined the outside of police headquarters, where inside more than 100 of those people who were arrested last night at both campuses are now being released. I want to show you all a live look right now. Let's keep in mind, Mike and Charlene, that these people have been out for several hours from last night, and they are still here today. Many of them wrapped up in blankets, sipping on warm drinks, but they are receiving those who are coming out from police headquarters. They are giving them supplies from food and water. We saw one person that was taken away. He was put on a stretcher and put into an ambulance. Also, some other people are receiving legal services this morning. Now let's get straight to some video from just hours ago at both campuses at Columbia University and City College. This really gives us a clear picture as law enforcement made their way onto school grounds, scenes of confusion and chaos as the NYPD efforted those arrests in trying to dial down an already tense situation. NYPD began moving onto Columbia's campus around 9 last night at the university's request, saying the decision was made to, quote, restore safety and order to our community. Similarly, CUNY made the decision to request assistance from the NYPD as large crowds of demonstrators marched from the university to the City College campus. Take a look now. This is video that the NYPD released just yesterday as outside agitators who have their own agenda in mind made their way inside of Hamilton Hall, some bringing multiple barricades inside of the hall, and at another point, one person appears shattering glass in a door frame. Many of these people wearing hoodies with their face covered. The police commissioner sending his message on the role of the department.
The right to protest and speak your mind is critical to our democracy, and the NYPD's job is to protect that right. We will never tolerate violence, property damage, or disruption of emergency services.
And take a look right now. This is video of a few of the more than 100 people that were arrested last night as they were escorted out of police headquarters. As we've been out here, each time someone is released, there is much emotion and chanting. And when we hear chanting and when we hear people in just an uproar, one person even playing music from a boombox right there, there's just an explosion of emotion out here. Again, when those people are escorted from police headquarters, that's when they're receiving water, that's when they're receiving food, as well as there's an illegal intake center that's happening out here. Students from the school who have been at those protests from overnight, they said it was important for them to be here to make sure that those who are coming out were received well. We're here outside of police headquarters this morning. I'm Phil Tate, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Phil, thank you. It was a dramatic night out west as well, and breaking right now, violent clashes at UCLA. This is a live look. In fact, this is a much different look than what we saw just hours ago, where police are actually on campus now. Images overnight, though, captured from our sister station's helicopter camera, showed brawls breaking out at an encampment between pro-Israeli and pro-Palestinian protesters, with at several moments no law enforcement in sight or stopping them. Attackers using 2x4s, metal fences, umbrellas as weapons. Some even set off fireworks. Take a listen to some of the reporting from our ABC station above the scene.
Because you can see more violence breaking out here at the very corner of the quad, and it's almost as if the mission here is to just kind of, you know, destroy the encampment. I mean, they're basically just trying to tear it down. So it's really a scary sight if this just continues into the wee hours of the morning.
And it did, as it is now 3:11 in LA. We do not have details on injuries, but some people were spotted being carried away. LAPD officials said they were in contact with campus police. It does appear that right now California Highway Patrol is there on campus. But the police did not arrive until some 2 hours after the violence erupted. Of course, we'll continue to monitor the situation out west and across the country. Now to Washington, where House Speaker Mike Johnson says his chamber is planning a vote today on a bill called the Anti-Semitism Awareness Act. This would codify the definition of anti-Semitism. It comes after Speaker Johnson visited Columbia's campus here in Manhattan last week.
We have a role to play. We're going to continue to do our job in the Congress, in the House,
the House Republicans are on this like white on rice.
Well, the bill is led by Long Island Republican Mike Lawler and New Jersey Democrat Josh Gottheimer, who is a co-sponsor.
Meanwhile, as the war continues between Israel and Hamas, Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Tel Aviv. He met with Israel President Isaac Herzog earlier this morning and reiterated his call for a ceasefire. Blinken is also expected to meet with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. ABC News has learned that the Biden administration is considering bringing some Palestinians who have escaped Gaza to the U.S. as refugees. According to a proposal, the move would be made using the refugee admissions program. Stay with us as we continue to follow the latest on the war and the unrest on college campuses here at home.
Well, to some other news this morning, disgraced movie mogul Harvey Weinstein is due back in a Manhattan Supreme Court today for his first appearance since an appeals court overturned his 2020 rape conviction and ordered a new trial. The 72-year-old hospitalized shortly after his return to the city jail system on Friday from an upstate prison. The New York Court of Appeals vacated his conviction last week, saying a trial judge let jurors see and hear too much evidence not directly related to the charges he was facing. The move erased 23 years of a prison sentence, but Weinstein remains in custody because he was convicted of another rape in Los Angeles and was sentenced to 16 years in prison. Happening today, the City Council will hold a hearing on the proposal to give rats birth control. Under the legislation, the health department would be required to deploy contraceptive pellets that sterilize both male and female rats. The pilot program would start in a couple of neighborhoods. The measure also aims to reduce reliance on rat poison, which contributed to the death of the beloved owl named Flacco.
Happening today, pickleball returns to Central Park's Woolman Rink for a second season. You can sign up for court reservations and lessons online through City Pickle, the company that runs the courts. They'll be open through the early fall. 6:13 right now. You're never more than 7 minutes away from weather and traffic. Sam, back now with the AccuWeather forecast. Hello.
Hi. So if we do pickleball like you and Mike and Heather and
Mike and Charlene, over to you.
All right, thank you both. Coming up, what to expect as the Fed announces its latest interest rate decision today.
Now, New York's #1 news, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
An historic day in Manhattan as Donald Trump becomes the first former U.S. president to stand trial on criminal charges. What hundreds of potential jurors are being asked today as both sides begin the tedious task of trying to sit an impartial jury.
How will Israel respond? That is the big question following Iran's aerial attack over the weekend. The message from U.S. officials as they work to prevent further escalation in the conflict.
The war, the Trump trial posing unique security challenges for the NYPD. What they're doing to keep everybody safe. Good morning on a busy Monday. It's April 15th. By the way,
Mike and Charlene, back to you.
All right, thank you both. We begin now with a historic criminal trial of former President Trump.
It is set to get underway with jury selection starting hours from now right here in Manhattan. Mr. Trump facing 34 counts of falsifying business records in connection to a hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels. The trial expected to last at least 2 months. And with Trump, the presumptive GOP nominee for president, required to attend each day.
And that means tight security and disruptions in Manhattan as Trump makes his way day after day to court. Lindsay Tuckman is standing by for more on safety as the NYPD also monitors potential security concerns stemming from the war in the Middle East.
But let's begin with Eyewitness News reporter Phil Tate because he's live outside of Manhattan Criminal Court with what we expect to unfold in this trial. Phil.
Mike, good morning. In just hours, Donald Trump will make history as the first former president to be held on trial as he faces these criminal charges. Meanwhile, jury selections are expected to get underway in just hours. The former president will be here for these proceedings in this hush money case. This as he faces those 34 accounts which accuses him of falsifying business documents he made to former fixer Michael Cohen related to hush money payments to adult film star Stormy Daniels in 2016 to keep her quiet about a long denied affair. Today, the process begins as Judge Merchan plans to seat 18 jurors, 12 of which will make the decision to convict the former president with an additional 6 serving as alternates. Prospective jurors will find out a 7-page questionnaire asking whether they've attended a Trump rally, follow him on a social media site, or have any feelings or beliefs about the way the former president is being treated in this case. Important to note, potential jurors will be anonymous to the public, but Trump and the lawyers in the case will know their names. Trump is prohibited from making public comments about prospective jurors, and at a rally Saturday, the former president giving his take on this long-awaited case.
The entire world will witness the commencement of the very first Biden trial. They're all Biden trials, you know that, right? And I'm proud to do it for you. Have a good time watching. I will be forced to sit fully gagged. I'm not allowed to talk. Can you believe it? They want to take away my constitutional right to talk. I have a crooked judge.
Wrongdoing, as well as he denies that alleged affair with Stormy Daniels. This morning will also be standing by for possible protests outside the courthouse. We're in Lower Manhattan this morning. I'm Phil Tate, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Phil, thank you. 6:05 now, and the world waiting for Israel's next move after Iran's unprecedented aerial attack over the weekend. More than 300 missiles and drones fired at Israel. The vast majority were shot down. Israel's war cabinet set to meet again in less than an hour after it spent hours yesterday preparing for a potential response. President Biden, meanwhile, meeting with leaders of the G7 to try to prevent further escalation here. Eyewitness News reporter Josh Einiger live in Jerusalem with the very latest. Josh.
Mike, good morning to you. Good morning to Charlene as well. We are standing outside effectively Israel's White House. This is the residence of the president, Isaac Herzog. We're here actually because Cardinal Timothy Dolan is meeting with the president right now, and we'll be talking to the cardinal a little bit later on about his meeting. But of course, this comes, as you said, Mike, in the course of this wider war that is developing with Iran. Everyone has now seen this video by now of weapons streaking through the sky over the weekend, rockets right over, in some cases, the sacred religious landmarks of the old city of Jerusalem. This was an unprecedented escalation in this war. The attack by Iran involving more than 330 missiles and attack drones that originated, importantly, on Iranian soil and targeted Israeli soil. But Israel's vaunted missile defense system was able to take down 99% of these projectiles, meaning a huge victory for the ongoing allied effort to defend democratic interests here in the Middle East. But now, all eyes, as you say, Mike, are on the Israeli War Cabinet, which will reconvene this afternoon. It'll be the second straight day they deliberate to determine how to react to Iran. There are many, many questions, and there's a lot of pressure on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Pressure from his right flank to react very strongly and fight back against Iran, but a lot of pressure from the United States, from the White House, from other world leaders trying to turn down the temperature and prevent a wider and much more devastating escalation in this conflict.
Thanks to the commanders of the IDF and its fighters, thanks to the technology, thanks to the industries. Faced with the threat of Iran, we will build a regional coalition and exact a price from Iran in a way and at a time that suits us.
Our commitments are ironclad to defending Israel and to helping Israel defend itself. And as the president has said many times, we don't seek a wider war in the region. We don't seek a war with Iran. I think I'll leave it at that.
And that's a really important point there from John Kirby, the National Security Council spokesman. The White House has communicated to Netanyahu that they do not intend to be a part of any kind of offensive plan, any kind of strategic plan Israel might have to be offensive against Iran. They have committed to defend Israel, but of course the U.S. wants to prevent being dragged into some enormous war, and so as a result they're pressuring very, very strongly the state of Israel to try to turn down the temperature. Remember, Iran was responding to aggression that originated with Israel when it targeted an Iranian consulate in Syria, killing several military officials from Iran. So it was tit for tat. The question is, will Israel now react to the reaction, which will, of course, cause a further spiral, many people fear, in the conflict here in the Middle East. We are live in Jerusalem this morning. Josh Einiger, Channel 7, Eyewitness News. Mike and Charlene.
Josh, we very much appreciate it. Thank you. The potential escalation in the Middle East, coupled with the Trump criminal trial, means stepped-up security right here in Manhattan. Eyewitness News reporter Lindsay Tuckman live outside of Trump Tower with that part of our coverage. Lindsay?
Charlene, it certainly will be a very busy day for law enforcement across the city, and not just today, but potentially for the days and weeks to come. The former president did arrive to his New York home here at Trump Tower very early this morning and will be leaving in a few hours from now. And because of that, you can expect a very heavy security presence. And you can already see it behind me here. There are several layers of barricades up and down Fifth Avenue for pedestrians who are able to walk by at this moment. But later, when the former president is moving, they will not be able to do so. Also at this point, 56th Street behind me here is closed altogether to vehicle traffic between Fifth Avenue and Madison, and you can see there's already police officers on duty standing by. This, as security really is top of mind because of the trial as well as the violence in the Middle East. So what we can expect in regards to the trial and security, since the former president will be going back and forth to Lower Manhattan for the duration of this trial, which is expected to last between 6 and even 8 weeks, there will be periodic road closures as Secret Service brings him throughout the city. We also anticipate protests throughout the city because of this trial, and the Secret Service will be working with the NYPD as well as court officers to maintain that high level of safety on the streets, in public areas, and in the courtroom. As for those other security concerns, police say after Iran's attack on Israel, it is on alert and it is monitoring the situation, given that New York does have the second largest population of Jews in the world. Police will be visible because of that, particularly around synagogues, places of worship, and any possible protests. There is a scheduled pre-planned pro-Palestinian rally happening today, but at this moment there are no credible or specific threats.
One of the things that I think you're going to be seeing for sure is NYPD asking the public to say, if you see something, say something. Anything could occur at this point. People still need to be aware and be cognizant of the threat. And just, if something it doesn't seem right, call it in. And the worst case scenario is that it just doesn't turn out to be anything.
And really, given the historic nature of all these major events, you will see that increased police presence throughout the city. There will also be increased monitoring of social media and any intelligence, as well as those road closures that you should just be mindful of as you move throughout the city. Secret Service says that it is not acting much more different than it would for any former president. But again, this is a rather high-profile event. Former President Donald Trump will be leaving Trump Tower here later this morning to head to Lower Manhattan for the first day of that trial. Live in Midtown, Lindsay Tuckman, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Lindsay, thanks so much. Breaking news out of the Bronx, a deadly shooting outside a McDonald's early this morning. Newscopter 7 over the scene here in the Mott Haven section right now. Police say one man was shot multiple times at 4 a.m. and was pronounced dead at Lincoln Hospital. The other victim was shot in the torso and is in critical condition. Investigators are trying to determine a motive. Stay with Eyewitness News for updates on this breaking story.
6:12 and a developing story unfolding near Syracuse, where 2 officers have been shot and killed while investigating a stolen vehicle. This happened last night as police say the suspect was also shot and killed. Authorities say officers attempted to stop the car and trace the vehicle to a home in Salina. Shots were then fired at a sheriff's deputy and a Syracuse officer, killing both of them. Investigators are still trying to determine a motive.
If you haven't done so already, today is the deadline to file your taxes. Those who file for an extension by today are going to get until October 15th. And if you fail to file in time, the IRS will issue a 5% penalty each month you're late.
Tonight, 36 young women will hear their names called in the WNBA draft. This class includes some of the biggest names in the history of college basketball, including the NCAA's all-time leading scorer, Caitlin Clark. It's all going to be going down at the Brooklyn Academy of Music. This will be the first time since 2016 that fans will be able to attend the draft in person. A whole lot of excitement. Tickets sold out in just 15 minutes, but we got you covered. All the coverage of the draft begins with WNBA Countdown tonight at 7 on ESPN, and the draft starts at 7:30. Ryan Field will be out there as well. It's just so exciting to see so many people into this sport now.
Yeah, and it's like, because, fans weren't invited to the draft in
the past few years. Yes, so since 2016, this will be the first time fans being there. About 1,000 inside BAM there in Brooklyn.
That just goes to show how much interest, right?
And it's going to be a great day to do anything outside.
Yes, it is. 6:13 right now. You know, we're more than 7 minutes away from alternate side of the street parking rules are in effect. Charlene and Mike, over to you.
Thank you both. Coming up here on Eyewitness News this morning, an 11th hour effort by Republicans to repeal congestion pricing.
Plus, what could be better than a park full of golden retrievers? Oh, just so cute. The special meaning behind this doggy meetup.
Now, New York's #1 news, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
The holiday rush is on. Today is expected to be one of the busiest travel days of the year as millions head to their Memorial Day weekend destinations. Also, New York City beaches are set to open tomorrow. What you need to know about lifeguard staffing.
Eyewitness News has you covered for all of your holiday weekend plans. Heather O'Rourke and Lindsay Tuckman are keeping an eye on the roads, and meteorologist Annie Beckstrom will have the forecast.
Yeah, we got our whole crew, but first we are covering several breaking news stories, including an officer hit by a suspect who was trying to speed off from a traffic stop. Cops then firing their guns at the car.
All of this happening in East New York, Brooklyn, and that's where Eyewitness News reporter Crystal Cranmore is standing by live at the scene. Crystal?
Good morning. Well, according to investigators, police are still looking for the suspect and the suspect vehicle. But just within the last half hour, more police showed up taking photos and looking for any surveillance video that could help piece together what exactly happened this morning. Now, police were first called out to the scene around 1 o'clock this morning. This is the intersection of Hegeman Avenue and Van Siclen Avenue. Police were conducting a traffic stop around 12:45 this morning when the driver of the vehicle sped off, hitting the officer. Police opened fire, sending bullets flying through this neighborhood as the SUV got away. Now, the injured officer was taken to the hospital with a minor injury to the ankle. Now, meanwhile, as police were conducting this investigation, our cameras were rolling as this black Toyota Camry crashed into this police SUV at the scene. The driver was on Hendrick Street attempting to make a right on Hegeman Avenue, and it sounded like from the conversation that I was hearing, he did not see the police tape. Fortunately, no one was injured, it appeared, but the driver was issued a summons for distracted driving and sent on his way. Now, back here live, police are looking for a gray Toyota Highlander with New York license plates. This is a description of the vehicle involved in that original investigation. Again, a gray Toyota Highlander. For now, we're live in East New York, Brooklyn. Crystal Cranmore, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Crystal, thank you very much. And more breaking news this morning, this time in Washington Heights. Police are looking for the person they say struck and killed a bicyclist. A 30-year-old man was hit as he rode his bike along the Washington Bridge at Amsterdam Avenue. This happened just after 11 last night.
Also breaking in the Bronx, 3 people were shot, including a man and a woman who died. This happened on Davidson Avenue in University Heights just after midnight. Police say 2 suspects drove off from the scene on a moped. Stay with Eyewitness News as we continue to follow all of these breaking stories. You can also find the very latest updates on abc7ny.com.
So we do not mind turning our attention to the weather this morning, especially after yesterday's strong storms, because it's a big improvement today.
It certainly is a big improvement, but do not expect the entire holiday weekend to be completely dry. Meteorologist Annie Beckstrom joins us with the best days for that outdoor barbecue.
Yes, Charlene and Sandra, if you have outdoor plans today, tomorrow, Sunday, all look fine. By Monday, we're back to the potential for stronger storms moving through. So Memorial Day itself, not ideal, but for the next few, gorgeous conditions to get outside, and this morning, no exception. 69 degrees right now in Central Park under a sunny sky. A lot of us are waking up to sunshine, but some patchy fog is a problem. I'll show you visibilities in a second. Cooler for our suburbs, 54 in Poughkeepsie, 57 in Sussex and Newburgh this morning. Down the shore, Belmar starting at 65. So some spots cooler, but comfortable across the board. Now, unfortunately, a few areas, it's hard to see much of anything this morning. Pockets of very dense fog forming in northwest New Jersey. It looks like Sussex, Morristown down to 0. Can't see much of anything. 3 3 miles of visibility and ice slip. Out east, it looks like Montauk's and patchy fog developing as well. That's what happens when our dew points and our temperatures start to match, right? But drier air is filtering in. That'll help to clear out that patchy fog and haze this morning and eventually clear the cloud cover as well. So a mostly sunny afternoon ahead. Also want to mention quickly the earthquake overnight, around 3:50 a.m., 2.9 magnitude earthquake near Gladstone. If you were in the area and you felt it, yes, 2.9 magnitude earthquake. This is what we're looking at today. So even if you're starting with some cloud cover, that clears. Our temperatures make their way to the mid-80s. Fantastic for your Friday. And Saturday and Sunday, not bad either. Highs near 80 under a mix of sun and clouds with spotty showers. But by Monday, we're getting stormier. I'll have more on that coming up. Heather?
All right, let's go to Brooklyn if that's part of your plan. This is the Gowanus Expressway. You can see we do have an accident right over here being cleared in the HOV lane. Expect delays. George Washington Bridge, 40 to the upper, 20 to the lower. Lincoln looks minor. Holland Tunnel in about 10 to 15. So you can see the Lincoln looks really, really great. And this is just crazy because we don't usually see that. And here's the Holland as you go inbound. Just a delay from your 1 and 9 approach. 287 both ways between exits 41 and 42. 2 separate accidents. We just had Danny talking about Morristown. So this is right in the Morristown area. It's an overturned vehicle. There's also a crash involved in that. And we have Newscopter 7 up over the George Washington Bridge. We're going to check in and say good morning to John Del Giorno. Hey, John.
And good morning to you, Heather. You know, yesterday, if you were tuned in, you saw a picture that looked almost exactly like this. So we're starting off 2 mornings in a row with problems at the George Washington Bridge. Once again, like yesterday, the problem was overnight construction that ran late. They had construction up on the bridge, didn't get cleared out in time, and as a result, you've got all these delays. Now, all lanes are open up on the bridge. There was an earlier accident over on the Cross Bronx that only added to these delays. But if you're headed to the George, this is what you've got on the I-95 approach. Big delays. They're actually pushing about 50 minutes, almost an hour as you come inbound. If you want to take another approach, head for the lower level. You can save yourself a lot of time. Now, when we talk about the holiday weekend, the getaway used to begin on Fridays, but in recent years, Friday kind of puts you right in the middle of that big holiday getaway. We're going to see a lot of traffic out on the roadways today. With more on that, we've got Eyewitness News reporter Lindsay Tuckman standing by on the New Jersey Turnpike. Lindsay?
Yeah, John, a lot of people started their holiday road trip yesterday, and AAA does predict that nationwide the amount of people hitting the roads for the Memorial Day holiday weekend will exceed pre-pandemic levels. And we have seen some of those people already stopping by here today to the Vince Lombardi rest stop along the turnpike to get food and or gas. And they're making the smart decision to leave extra early. Let's take a live look right now at how it looks outside of Newark Airport. The traffic is moving very well right now. This is the good time to be driving, but you also have to remember a lot of people are going to be flying this holiday weekend. It's going to be record-breaking travel numbers up in the sky as well, so just going to add to any congestion. The Port Authority predicting that nearly 4.2 million people will use its bridges and tunnels over the holiday period, which again started yesterday and then ends on Tuesday. AAA says the worst times to hit the road, listen up, start at noon today and goes until 7 p.m. because that's when you're going to mix in with the commuters. The best time is now, before 11 a.m. and then after 8 p.m. if you don't mind driving in the dark. So we did talk to some of the early risers here today about their mindsets heading into the holiday weekend.
You can't. You just can't. Just go with it, grab some coffee and do what we can do.
The gas, the gas is actually fairly cheap. So, you know, didn't cost us too much to travel as far as we went. So that was a good thing. It's always good to save on gas.
It is always good to save on gas, and overall gas prices are down compared to last week. A national average right now for a gallon of regular is $3.61. In New York it is $3.68. Here in New Jersey the average is $3.51, and in Connecticut it is $3.67. And while it is overall down, it is higher than this time last year, so that's not great. But again, any lowering of prices is good news for drivers. Here along at the turnpike though, the price for a gallon of regular is a little higher than the state average. It's at $3.63. But again, gas prices lowering a bit in time for this busy holiday weekend is good news, and we'll continue to talk to drivers as they stop here to get that gas to fill up and then hit the road. Live in Ridgefield, Lindsay Tuckman, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Lindsay, thank you. We turn our attention now to the race for the White House. Former President Donald Trump held a rally at Crotona Park in the Bronx yesterday. Mr. Trump hoping to gain more support from Black and Latino voters.
These millions and millions of people that are coming into our country, the biggest impact and the biggest negative impact is against our black population and our Hispanic population, who are losing their jobs, losing their housing, losing everything they can lose.
The former president spoke for about 90 minutes in front of supporters. At the same time, a counter-protest was held in Crotona Park.
He's a crook, a liar, and a cheat, and he tries to make money off people, and that's what he's doing right now.
He's a great person. He does care for all the American people, for the country.
New York has voted for the Democratic presidential candidate in every election since 1988.
A bipartisan bill named after Michelle Go, who was fatally pushed in front of a subway 2 years ago, has been introduced in Congress. The Michelle Alyssa Go Act would repeal a rule that stops Medicaid from reimbursing mental health facilities with more than 16 beds. That rule often stops people from getting care. Officials say that the man who killed Go did not receive the mental health treatment he so desperately needed.
New this morning, yet another woman is suing Sean Diddy Combs for sexual assault. This latest accuser filed her lawsuit yesterday in New York County Supreme Court. She says she was a student at the Fashion Institute of Technology when she met Combs back in 1994. The lawsuit details several alleged incidents, including one where Combs allegedly forced her to take drugs and then forced her to have sex with his then girlfriend before raping her. The suit further details other alleged instances of rape and assault. This is the second new lawsuit against Combs this week. So far, no comment from him. Weapons charges have been filed against a teenager found carrying a loaded gun in his backpack at a school in Brooklyn. The discovery at George Westinghouse Career and Technical Education High School. Authorities say the 17-year-old tried to carry this weapon through a scanner at the school yesterday morning.
New York City schools will use an upcoming day off for students as a test run for virtual learning. On June 6th, students and teachers are being asked to log into their school's online systems while they're at home. This will be on a voluntary basis. The test comes after an attempt to hold remote learning on a snow day last year was met with widespread login problems and error messages. By the way, the day off, June 6th, is Anniversary Day or Chancellor's Day. New York City is touting a successful start to a new program offering free online therapy for kids ages 13 to 17 years old. 6,800 teens have signed up for NYC Teen Space. 65% of users reported improvement in their mental health. Underserved neighborhoods saw the most signups. 80% of users were Black, Latino, Asian American, or Native American.
Tonight, the Rangers will try to regroup in Game 2 against the Panthers in the Eastern Conference Final. The two teams will face off again at Madison Square Garden. The Panthers won Game 1, making it the first time the Rangers have trailed in a playoff series this year. The puck drops at 8 tonight. You can watch that game on ESPN.
Tomorrow, New York City's 8 public beaches will be open for swimming. Lifeguards are going to be on duty from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. through September 8th. While every city beach will be open, sections of each beach will be closed due to the staffing shortages. In some cases, Army Corps of Engineers work will prevent swimming too. The city says many of this summer's lifeguards are still in training, but by the time training is done, there should be more lifeguards than last summer.
Meanwhile, beach patrols will be keeping a close eye out for sharks this summer. In an announcement from Jones Beach yesterday, Governor Hochul said the state will be adding more drones to their fleets to monitor shark activity at state beaches. At least Drone 1 is designed to work in severe weather and could help distressed swimmers. Last year, there were 7 shark-related incidents off New York beaches.
Today, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy will be visiting Asbury Park to celebrate the start of summer. He's going to be highlighting the state's Boardwalk Preservation Fund. 18 communities were granted a total of $100 million to preserve and repair boardwalks on the Jersey Shore. Asbury received $20 million. 6:13, all this talk of beaches. I mean, it's the holiday weekend. You're never more than 7 minutes away from weather and traffic. Yeah. Lots riding on the forecast.
Back to you guys at the desk.
All right, thank you both. Up next, the new video showing golfer Scottie Scheffler's arrest 1 week ago.
Plus, why a 300-foot cake will be brought out today as part of a kickoff to the Bethpage Air Show.
Now, New York's #1 news. Channel 7 Eyewitness News this morning.
We're following several big stories at 6:30, including another subway derailment. This time it was an F train in Coney Island. We'll have the updates on the investigation and on your morning commute.
Plus, former President Trump set to appear in a Manhattan courtroom for closing arguments in a civil fraud trial. But will he actually address the court like he planned? Doesn't sound like it.
First, the weather, flooding concerns along the Passaic River as the water continues to rise, and there are a couple of more storms on the horizon. For the first time this morning, we're getting a look at the flooding up above from the Newscapter 7. We'll have the latest reports from the air and the ground. First, meteorologist Brittany Bell is here with the AccuWeather forecast. Brittany, good morning.
Good morning to you, too, and good morning, everyone. So let's start with a level check. Looking along the Passaic, this time at Little Falls. So currently that is still... Mike?
Brittany, thank you. And you talked about the concerns along the Passaic River, in particular Little Falls. We know Governor Murphy is planning to tour the damage later today. There's Eyewitness News reporter Phil Tate. He's there. So, Phil, give us an update. Where are we right now at 6:30?
Yeah, well, as you just mentioned, later this morning, we do expect to see Governor Murphy, who is expected to tour this area just right behind me, as it could potentially be impacted by those waters. Paterson, New Jersey, a close watch over there as well, as they could expect to see some waters impact over there. Well, right now, we are being told that minor flooding has begun on streets near the Passaic. I just want to get straight to some video out of Wayne, New Jersey right now. Take a look at your screen. This is all near the Passaic, which left residents in need of help with rescue efforts underway there. Well, all eyes are really now on both Little Falls and Paterson, as Mayor Saya says they are expecting a cresting at around 5 p.m. later today, and that means floodwaters will only rise and spill into streets. Well, this as more than 30 streets were closed, 12 rescue operations just last night. Thankfully, no one was injured. Well, 20 people went to Paterson's emergency shelter last night, and officials are urging residents to take all precaution.
I want to remind everyone, we had 12 rescue operations. Could have been avoided because people can't avoid driving into the water. So I want to underscore the importance of turning around and not drowning.
The water is coming up, and those that were inundated 3 weeks ago, I would tell them to leave their houses now. All they have to do is look out the front door. The water is rising.
And the Little Falls mayor says that they are cautiously optimistic, as they, as well as Paterson, are really bracing for those floodwaters that just creep in so quickly and can leave behind a lot of damage. Important to note, more than 5,000 New Jersey residents are waking up without power this morning. That's the very latest here in Little Falls. I'm Phil Tate, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
Phil, thank you. The flooding also causing problems on Route 23 in Pequannock. John Del Giorno above the situation in Newscapter 7. John, what do we know?
And Mike, these are the live pictures from Newscapter 7. Once again, a long stretch of Route 23 from Wayne up into Pequannock, affecting commuters in both Passaic and Morris counties. That stretch of Route 23 shut down this morning, as once again a portion of that roadway is underwater. With Street Spotter 7, we can highlight Route 23 and your problem area. The flooding itself is right here near Alexander Avenue. That's where we've got standing water up onto the roadway itself, and that's resulting in the road closure. However, these closures begin all the way up in Pequannock on the southbound side. Northbound, all lanes are shut in Wayne, with traffic being diverted onto Route 202, and I expect this closure to remain in place for some time. Now, Heather O'Rourke standing by with a look at the rest of the commute. Heather, this isn't our only problems on the roads this morning.
Absolutely not, John. And the Hutch going north at Wilmot Road, it's an accident involving a truck that hit an overpass. So we have reports that it's going northbound, but I'm seeing a lot of southbound delays getting into that spot as well. And then we're taking a look at what's happening here on the Sawmill River Parkway, both ways between Tuckahoe Road and Lawrence Street, where we did have some flooding, and that has definitely gone down. So they have reopened that area. Landing Lane Bridge both ways closed in Piscataway. This is not a big shocker for those who commute along Landing Lane Bridge. It is a pretty low bridge, but for those Rutgers students that might want to just travel around this area onto Landing Lane Bridge, just keep in mind that is closed with flooding, and we have alternate side of the street parking rules in effect. Mike, over to you.
Heather, thank you. 6:34, closing arguments today in former President Trump's civil fraud trial happening here in New York. The former president had planned to address the court himself. Now it looks like that's not going to happen. ABC's Aaron Katursky following the case closely in Lower Manhattan. So, Aaron, first of all, thanks for making the time this morning. I want to get to this because this is sort of the latest chapter in this battle that former President Trump has had with this judge in particular. So what played out, and why is the former president now not expected to address the court himself?
Take you back to January 4th, when the defense attorneys first informed the court that former President Trump would like to deliver the closing argument, at least a portion of it, himself. Mike, that is a highly unusual request for a defendant who is represented by attorneys, but former President Trump wants to do it. The New York Attorney General, Letitia James, objected to that request, but the judge said he would grant it, provided Trump agree to certain conditions to limit his remarks to relevant material facts that are in evidence, not give a campaign speech, and crucially, not impugn the judge, the Attorney General, the court, no incendiary remarks. And he gave the former president a number of deadlines to agree to those terms, and the former president never did. And so the judge said he assumes the former president will not be speaking in court here today, but Trump on social media said he still intends to show up and would still like to address the court and do a closing argument. So we'll see what happens.
Always the drama with the former president, particularly in these court cases. And Aaron, before we let you go, I mean, I mentioned this is kind of the latest chapter in this back and forth with the judge and the former president. We know the former president fined a couple of times, I believe, for violating the gag order that was put into place throughout this process. What is at stake here for Mr. Trump?
Well, you're right about that. The former president is under a limited gag order because he has made some disparaging remarks about not only the judge, but what really irked Judge Arthur Engoron were the remarks that Trump made, especially on social media, disparaging his law clerk, who sits right there on the bench with him. The two often confer on legal matters before the judge issues rulings from the bench. And a couple of different violations earned Trump some fines. But look, even though this is a really weird request to deliver his own closing statement, for Trump, this is a last chance potentially to save his business. He's facing a $370 million fine and the possibility that he could be banned from New York real estate. And we're still not quite sure what that could mean for all the buildings around here with Trump's name on it. Would they have to come off? Would he have to close down, move everything to Florida? So he could be facing a ban from the very industry that helped propel him to the White House, Mike.
And we could be almost to the finish line of at least a conclusion in this particular matter. We know you'll stay on top of it all day for ABC. Aaron, thanks so much for making the time, breaking it down. As you mentioned, it's such a complicated case. We know Aaron will have much more on Mr. Trump's court appearance coming up on GMA. Of course, we'll be covering this later today on all editions of Eyewitness News as well.
A lot of moving parts. This morning, authorities are investigating, meanwhile, if weather played a role in a wall collapse at a landmark building here in New York City in Little Italy. The building was once home to one of the oldest cheese shops in America, a Leva Dairy. The collapse happened yesterday afternoon. It left a room exposed. Luckily, good news, no one was hurt. According to preliminary reports, workers without a permit had been replacing wooden support beams with metal ones on the ground floor. Meanwhile, another wall collapsed. This one is in the Tremont section of the Bronx. A 150-foot retaining wall gave way, and the debris crushed cars and equipment and several auto shops below it on Carter Avenue. Neighbors in several nearby homes have been told to vacate. They say they've been worried about that wall for years, but there's been a battle between homeowners and the city over who is responsible for it.
The Adams administration is now walking back some of those proposed budget cuts to the NYPD and FDNY. The mayor says better than expected revenues into the city, now allowing him to fund those departments. The mayor had ordered a 5% cut to all city services as he tries to handle the migrant crisis.
Just days after one train collision and derailment injured more than 20 people on the Upper West Side, more news to rattle the nerves of subway riders. An F train jumped the track in Coney Island, leading to subway service disruptions, although service is now restored in time for this morning commute. Eyewitness News reporter Janice Yu is live in Coney Island, where MTA crews have been out inspecting those tracks overnight. Janice, good morning.
Good morning, Shantae. Yeah, they were out here well into this morning, even inspecting the tracks as well as the infrastructure there. And as you mentioned, service has been restored to the F train. So that is the good news. But keep in mind the northbound trains will be running a little bit slower than usual. So this is the train that runs above West 6th Street between 8th and Neptune Avenue. Now, the train was approaching Neptune Station around 12:30 yesterday when it derailed with 37 passengers and workers on board. Luckily, within an hour, 2 rescue cars were able to safely evacuate everyone. No one was hurt, but this, of course, is a terrifying situation for the people on board. The investigation into exactly what happened now is underway, but take a look at these pictures obtained by Eyewitness News. These were taken where that derailment happened, and it appears to show rails that were misaligned. Transit Authority officials say the rail car itself is relatively new, and the investigation is now focused on those tracks.
Our focus will be on the track. It looks like there may have been a track issue, but still we'll need to look at truck. We'll need to do the download, as I mentioned, but that will be initially part of our focus, obviously as part of this investigation. The track needs to be straight in order for a train to run on top of it safely and without a slow speed derailment as we had here.
Well, this is the second train derailment, to happen in the last week. So definitely concerning for riders, though officials do say it does not appear at this time that these two incidents are connected. Live in Coney Island, Janice Yu, Channel 7 Eyewitness News.
A lot of moving parts there, Janice. Thank you. Meanwhile, let's take a closer look at the commute with Heather O'Rourke.
All right, Shantae, Janice, we are looking at the Belt Parkway.
And once again, some of this rain could be heavy. We also could see gusty winds. More details about all of that coming up. Shantae.
Brittany, thank you. Coming up, a new soccer stadium slated for Willets Point clears a big hurdle.